Hello? Can you guys hear me okay? I think OBS just timed out. Hi, Pencil. Hi, Kyle. How are you guys doing? So today I will be taking a look at this anatomy sketch and talking about what's working, what's not working, and how to perfect it. I got my first mosquito bite of the year. I am suffering. The first mosquito bite, it's so diabolical because like your immune system forgot basically how to deal with mosquito bites. So as the summer develops, you get mosquito bites. You don't really, they don't hurt like those first couple ones of the season. Oh my God, they're diabolical. They're so big and so painful, and they have their own heartbeat. I'm sorry. That's disgusting. I'm sorry. Because it feels like there's a whole heart attached to my ankle right now. They always go for my ankles. This mother. Well, anyway, let's talk about anatomy today. It's going to be an interesting topic. Those other pieces that I have selected are actually my patron's work, which I have not finished critiquing for the day. My patrons handed in 12 pieces, I think, anatomy figure drawings. They do have a little bit of nudity, so I'm not sure about showing them. But yeah, the theme for today's classes is all anatomy. So I'm gonna pose this in Portrait Studio and talk about what's happening in the gesture, how to make it look less stiff. So if you saw somebody sitting like this in front of you, you would feel a little bit like, okay, are they uncomfortable? What's happening? The spine is sort of contracting a little bit and pushing upward. The head is tilted, but also pushed back against the neck, and it looks very stiff overall. The head also feels a little bit compressed. The canvas is very tight. There's no room. They're just, I'm not sure if this is how you paint it or if you cropped it to post it. I'll enlarge the canvas either way. And then there's the asymmetry. You are compressing the horizontal lines of symmetry along the face. You are compressing them. You're pinching them as they get closer. So this is pinched. That's not what we do. If all levels of the body are the same distance from the camera, this is 1 foot away from the camera, this, there wouldn't be any of that extreme foreshortening that you're seeing. Well, not extreme, but it's foreshortening. There wouldn't be any of that, since in order to get an eye that is smaller in the distance and an eye that is larger close up, the camera would need to be right by her cheek, right? I mean, if you don't believe me, get your camera. Get your front-facing camera. I dare not do that right now because I will lose all self-esteem for the rest of the class. Oh no, I did it. And then take your camera and bring it really close to your eye, and you'll see the foreshortening happen. The eye that is closest to the camera is going to be gigantic compared to the far eye. But then you extend your arm all the way out, and you'll see that both eyes are pretty much the same size. The further you get from the further your arm gets from both eyes. So if the distance between the camera and the object is the same all in all for the whole head, you would not get this compression. The camera would have to be right by your face. Unfortunately now I've seen my face in front face camera. And it's like, I hate that. It just takes away all your self-esteem. So I'm going to correct that. And then the same thing, you did the same thing on the breasts. The breasts look small. The only way the breast does this, if all objects are equal distance from the camera, is if the one breast is smaller. That's it. There's no need for you to be applying perspective, especially inconsistency, because it's not here. One thigh isn't smaller than the other thigh. You seem to be only applying perspective in some areas and not applying it everywhere else. Why? Right? You have to be consistent with your perspective. So let's enlarge the canvas real quick so we got some space to work. Okay, and then let's pose this. I'm going to pose it really quickly so that we can talk about the individual parts. Posing it is pretty important. All right, so I'm going to just position it in a perfect spot and then try to pose her similar to what we have here. So we've got a 3/4 view rotation, and we've got the one thigh pointing upward. I'm just going to tilt the knee down. One thigh pointing straight down, and then we've got a pretty much even 3/4 view moving up into the torso. Let me arrange the light so we can see all objects. Then we've got a head that is kind of tilting back, showing us the bottom part of the chin. And it's in 3/4 view, so it's tilting backward. One arm is perfectly straight down, which is never really well advised. It's very stiff. The arms are the most stiffness-inducing extremity of the body. If you don't show that these arms have multiple joints, you're really gonna end up making a stiff-looking gesture. Like, you need to show these arms have the flexibility that they have. So how do you show that? Well, you just kind of let one arm hover away from the torso. Let the joint of the elbow kind of engage. That will make a generally less stiff looking arm. If you just show that the elbows aren't like stuck, like they're not paper mache, they're not stuck the way they are. And you kind of have the spine flexed a little bit. And so you kind of have like an upward movement in the chest. And I think that's pretty close to what you were doing. So let me take a quick screenshot of this so that we can bring it back to Photoshop. And let's enlarge the canvas for our use. We'll enlarge the character and have at it. So what we're seeing here, the stiffness is coming from this, like, I'm going to show you the arrows of movement that I'm seeing. So we got an arrow of movement here, almost like somebody kind of like brought a feather and like tickled her neck, and she's like, what's that? Do you see what I mean? Like, she's kind of throwing that shoulder upward, and she's just like, stop. You know what I mean? And then you see this type of movement. So we got this, we've got this, and then we've got this. The head is pushing right into the neck. So these are all points of tension right here. We really need to release this tension. She looks very, very stressed out. So let us release that. So how do we do that? Well, if we look at the reference, we see this, you see this area of like this air space right here, this like extra space. That's one way we could release the neck from the shoulder and make it look a lot less stiff. Stiffness and studying anatomy goes hand in hand. It's always going to be there because there are so many components. You get a beginner to start studying anatomy, they will always have a stiff gesture. But what is the opposite movement that they could do to avoid stiffness all around? Don't worry about the face so much. Draw things in, draw the trunk of the tree before drawing the branches and any additional attachments. Draw the trunk. So the trunk here, which is the chest and the torso, it looks pretty symmetrical. You got a good recession of size and scale towards the back shoulder. But then right here, as soon as you add the neck and the face, for some reason the face made you forget what you were doing. That's usually what faces do. So once we get rid of the face and only treat it as an additional little extension of the trunk of the tree, we kind of don't feel so oriented towards making it a character. We keep thinking about it as a structure. So once we get rid of the face, we can see, okay, there's like this there's like this obvious tension now here when we get rid of the face. We're no longer thinking about where they need to look with their eyes, the eyes that we're drawing. We're just so concerned about these eyes. We can just focus on the face. So I'm going to get rid of the face or the head. I'm going to get rid of it. And I'm going to, let me use this. I'm going to focus only on where the neck is coming from in this gesture. Just focus only on the neck. All right, so that'll make it easier for me to liquefy it. And so we're just trying to create a less tense movement of the shoulders and make the breasts symmetrical, show that gravity is pulling on the breasts in this way that reveals that they are of less density than the rest of the body. All right, show where the bones jut out of the rib cage and show where the fat begins. Two very, very different types of curves. This curve is more sharp. This curve is more wide. This curve represents fat, skin and bone. This curve represents fat. The belly button needs to be positioned on the symmetry line that bisects both halves of the face, both vertical halves of the body, And so the belly button is a huge landmark for the human body. All right, and then we're thinking about just the structure again. And we are tracking down all the symmetry, all the points of symmetry. So we have the crotch right here, but the belly button here. But this belly button is symmetrical with the breast. So there's a problem here. So it feels like you rotated the body out of its symmetry, but only on the chest. So it feels like the belly button should be somewhere here. But if we do that, that looks off for this breast. So the main trunk of the body, the symmetry line of that main trunk, which is the torso and the pelvis and the shoulders, has not been planned. It's not been thought about. You were too busy drawing the eyes and the nose and the mouth to really think about this core structure, the foundation. When you're building a house, the more time you spend on the foundation, the longer that house will last. The more time you spend measuring, perfecting, solidifying, and cementing, even just literally, the lower structure and foundation of the house, the more happy you'll be later on. All the face and all of the extra decorative stuff, that's inconsequential. Before you get all your lines straight, you can't just decorate the structure. So this is where a lot of the failure comes from for beginners. They think about this stuff way too early. Even the breasts right now are causing this they're confounding you. They're causing this confusion because we're seeing where you place the crotch line and where you place the breast line is not working. So how does the Portrait Studio model help us figure it out? Well, the Portrait Studio model is aligned between the belly button and the chest. But if we go to the Portrait Studio model, the way we place the plates, or the way I would directed the placement of these plates when we were building Portrait Studio, is I knew that the chest and the stomach and the torso had to be in two pieces and the chest had to be its own piece, so that when we rotate this and we rotate this, we are still attaching half the belly button to the crotch line. The part of the hips, let's say, that don't move, they do move, but let's say that the parts that don't move, let me rotate her back to us, are going to, this is a very possible gesture. It's very easy to do, very possible. Maybe it requires a little bit of spinal flexibility, but it's still possible. Half the belly button is attached to the pelvic half of the torso. So half the belly button is attached here. So at some point, you're going to have to find the belly button by finding the crotch symmetry line. Okay, so we're going to find that. We know that half the belly button is supposed to be here. The other half can be extended this way. right? But even then, we're kind of pushing the flexibility. Why don't we push this breast more this way? Just like we have with Portrait Studio, the breast is a little bit more towards the left, and that will help us identify where to place this belly button. But it feels like the upper half and the lower half of this are two completely different bodies, simply because the perspective line, the symmetry line, has been lost. So I'm going to get rid of this. Place the belly button where I know it should be in relation to the symmetry line of the lower half of the torso. And then I'm going to connect it and show how it is traveling in this direction towards the upper half of the torso. She's kind of like tucking her stomach in, and then I'm going to take the entire arm, collarbone, and breast and show that it is wide enough for this body. And then just so it doesn't look excessively masculine, I'm going to push the shoulder back in. And now we have enough space for the rest of this breast. For the breasts, don't draw this line. Don't draw this line. They're not necessary. You only really want to show where the structure of the breast is towards where it's building its mass. It's building its mass towards the bottom. Up here, the only thing that will be showing edges and lines up here is when you block. That's the only place you're going to see that. And then this symmetry line is now lining up with the rotation. We place the collarbone on either side of that symmetry line. And then this far shoulder can come down just a little bit. Now for this arm, it feels like it's not really projecting out. So just like I did with the Portrait Studio model, I let it orbit a little bit higher. So I showed the bottom part of that arm. And then I'm finding the rib cage, just like we have here, and showing how it is indenting before the fat takes over, the visceral fat. Okay, so now we've got visceral fat here with a bump line that's very different from the rib cage bump, which is a little bit sharper. See how this one is like more of a triangle and this one's more of a curve? These are two completely different shapes. One shows that the rib is underneath, jutting out, and one shows that there's fat being pulled by gravity, pooling on the lower part. Gravity finds liquids and makes them pool in this way. That's why it's more important to show breasts that do this, where there's a downward curve, than breasts that do this. Because you really have to like show some kind of object pushing back up against the fluid of the breast to make it defy gravity like that and into an upward curve. All right, and then we look at what you did with the backside. So here, I'm not sure what's happening. Which of these lines, is this my work or is this the original? No, it's not my work. So which of these lines is the line that represents the edge of the body? I feel like this line is better because it shows that the fat is being pulled in by the panty line. And then it just reaches out. Just like that. Okay, before this becomes dome-like, we actually do see a bit of an indentation of the hip bone joint before we see it completely emerge. But I feel like our visual library has been affected a lot by BBLs because they're just packing fat in a really unnatural way on the human body. It looks so odd. And then we have the flattening of the panty line right there, and then the fat just emerging. Okay, so now the shoulders don't feel like they're compressing. There is that open space there. Let's bring the head back in and place it somewhere that will give us that same flexibility. Tilting the head over there just like they did, and I'm going to push the head forward. The reason I'm going to push the head forward is because, pay attention to this, the human body from the side doesn't look like this. The human body from the side looks like this. There's this, you know, exaggerating a little bit, but there is a curve to the human spine. And usually the head isn't right on top of the spine. It's thrown forward. Like imagine throwing a ball. The spine throws the head forward with the neck, giving you a more believable neck projection. Then you have the torso, then you have the backside. So you have this compressed, pushed in head shape right here that makes the head look very unnatural. So let us, let me separate this first. Let us push the head forward so it feels like it really is coming right out of a neck that is responding to a spine that is more realistic. So I'm going to get rid of this perfectly straight line. You see this perfect straight line? It's not even there in Portrait Studio. The Portrait Studio model is curved. This is a curved line right here. So this should also be a curved line. Once we know what the spine is doing, how it's tossing that neck forward, we'll be able to know where to put the head. Again, build the trunk before you add the branches. You can't just draw a tree, leaves first, and then the branches, and then the bark, and it's just going to look like a really weird ass tree. Sometimes drawing the way nature draws in the same order and the same task list, it really does show more, it shows the work to look, adds that realism that you just didn't understand how to achieve if you had it backwards. It just adds this level of realism to it. Like it really does feel like the tree grew like that in your drawing. And so I am cutting off that extra size you had in the neck. You're trying to show us the bottom of the chin. So we would see the bottom of the chin. Right here, this would be the bottom of the chin. Okay, and then the ear, pretty good placement on the ear, I would say. And then the symmetry line. And then here is where you can find all of the accessories, the features, the eye, where you're going to place the eye. All right, and then so I wouldn't worry so much about where to place the lip corner before finding, you know, exactly what the nose is doing, how that rotation is happening, making sure the cheeks are all rotating properly, and of course flipping your canvas. Finding that cheek and temple, finding the entire temple line first. Find that temple and it'll show you where that eye is actually sitting. And then find the tail of the eyebrow. Tail of the eyebrow is really important. So I'm trying to rotate the head kind of in the same angle. We were seeing more profile in yours, but there was also just a little bit of 3/4 view as well. All right. So if we look at the before now, so merge down. If we look at the before, you can see how you were really compressing that body. It looked stiff. It looked pushed in. It didn't feel like it was sitting naturally with itself. Okay, and of course my features are different than yours. I'm not sure what you were going for with the features, more masculine or feminine. But I hope this gave you a good idea of the work process, like the actual process with which you are, like the process that you're working with, how you're building. You're always going to find that shape of the trunk first. It's so important to find it first. All right, and it's a very geometric shape. You can ignore the breasts for the most part. And this is how I do it. I do like a beanbag shape and then another shape, and I'm already seeing them automatically in my mind. the cubes under everything, right? And so I'm already seeing these, but you can throw those on top. And then I find the hip bones, I find the thighs. Of course, this is once I've found the gesture line, right? So I find the thighs after I obviously know where my gesture line is going to go. The thighs help me find exactly where that traffic area is for the crotch line. And then we're going to move down into that half belly button. If this was going to be twisting forward, that belly button would follow the upper symmetry line of the upper half of the torso trunk. And then the lower symmetry line would follow the upper half. So imagine the belly button as being shared between two objects, okay? Two moving continents. All right, and then after that, you find exactly where the shoulders are because you know where the torso is. Because you started with a torso that had a symmetry line, a gesture line that gave you a good idea of what this torso is doing in this angle. So your torso edges, these corners right here of the torso, you place balls right beside them, and that's where you're going to get the shoulder line. And then the arms, be noodly. Noodle it up. Be very, very, very flexible. The more flexible you are with arms, the less stiff your gestures will look. If you're always drawing arms like Barbie dolls, you know how Barbie arms are? Those old ass Barbies that had like the weird hook arm or the perpendicular arm. If you're going to draw stuff like that, it's going to make your work look very flat. You have to remember that there is a flexibility to the arm that starts in the gesture line. So let's do a random gesture. Let's put it to the test. Let's do a really random squiggle. Okay, and let's try to make sense of this squiggle as a gesture. So I'm going to think that this is the shoulder right here. I'm going to put the elbow somewhere here. Just remember, this is a random squiggle. This is just to show you how forgiving the arms are. And I'm going to try to attach some kind of cylinders on top. Okay, so I'm just following this gesture line here, trying to decide what the arm is doing. And then doing that. So now I have this really, really flexible looking arm that looks a lot more believable to what arms are actually doing in real life. So let's imagine that this is like some kind of hand. So the more flexible you are with hands, with arms, forget hands, I don't know how to draw hands. The more, and this is not the place. If you're looking for hands, this is not the place, all right? I do know how to draw hands, but I need a lot more time. I've always been honest about this. So this arm generally looks, you know what, this is embarrassing. I'm just going to go ahead and fix it real quick. This arm looks a lot more flexible, a lot more like it's hanging on its own weight, like there's gravity involved. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of that presence here because we started with a random squiggle. More often than not, the random squiggle is going to do more for you than a straight line when it comes to the arms. Never, ever, ever, ever do a straight line coming out of the torso. Never do this. Never. Because arms are most likely going to do something else. They're most likely going to be moving the elbow naturally. I mean, just right now, just don't move. Freeze. Whatever you're doing, freeze. What are your elbows doing? What is your arm doing? Most likely, I bet you they're not straight. They're doing some kind of bend. They're more comfortable that way. To do a straight hang, a dead hang, it's so unnatural, so unlikely. Almost always, the arms are more happy when they're in a bended state. That is where they're most comfortable. So when you do a random squiggle as an inspiration for the energy of the gesture, let's say you have like, you know, a really cool snake character and you wanted the arms to not be just dead. This is the character I always draw. I always draw snake characters. They're much fun. So let's just do random gestures for the arms. They're going to look more fitting, even if they're just these random, inexplicable gestures. They're going to look more fitting for what we're doing with the rest of the body than if we were to do two straight lines showing us a general direction of what the arms will be doing in this gesture. The straight lines are not conducive to flexibility, believability, realism, because that's more likely you're not going to find an upper arm that is cooperative with a lower forearm, because there's just this elbow is so flexible. You might as well just treat the arms as noodles. And there are so many joints on the arm. There is the shoulder, there's the elbow, there's the wrist. So automatically these lined up together, it's so unlikely. Let's put the elbow here, the shoulder here, the elbow here or here, the wrist here, the fingers here, you know, the finger joints, and the end of the arm here. You'll have more flexibility visible, more believability visible than anything else that you would have done for this snake gesture. You've used all of the joints. None of them are sitting like on exactly the same line. So be careful with that. Most of the stiffness comes from arms just completely misrepresented on the gestural level. See this straight line coming right down. It just never looks good. There's never really a good place to do it unless you're drawing some kind of soldier or some kind of like really stiff looking mummy. But even then that's with effect. And stiff looking mummies usually have like the grandma hands anyways. No offense to grandmas. Usually they kind of just bended everything and the wrists are kind of like dead weight. If it's a soldier, they're kind of standing straight, sure. But sometimes I feel like when I'm drawing more attentive characters or poised characters, doing a bend in the elbow, even though they're standing perfectly proud and straight, you know, soldier stance, doing like a slight bend in the elbow looks better than doing a perfectly straight arm. It just looks like a very stiff drawing that way. So those are my tips for you guys, for whoever did this drawing. I know I'm not memorizing names as I get these from the subreddit, but that's where I found this, I believe, on the subreddit. Okay, so before, after, a lot more flexibility. The breasts feel like they have some kind of downward pull in the body. The fat feels like it's being pushed up by this this more dense wrapping, and the ribs actually feel like they're jutting out. And the symmetry line is consistent. So we have a consistency in the symmetry line. You see the before symmetry line moving up this way, and then it just makes like a sharp turn. Like it feels like something that we really have to make a sharp turn to make it happen. It's not possible. So you have more of a consistency in that, more slow movement in the curvature, not sharp turn. Okay, so I hope this was helpful. Thank you for watching today. It's actually going to be a short class because I have 6 more pieces to critique for today for Patreon. And if you guys are interested in joining us on Patreon, patrons, apprentices get assignments, they get critique hours just for themselves, and they get critiques like for their customized critiques for their particular issues. The assignments handed in this month were amazing. They blew me away. And the skill range isn't just one specific skill range. You can come into the Patreon with no skill at all. There are adjusted assignments for those who are coming in and just want to focus on form studies moving forward. And you just hand in 1 piece every month, and you have the whole month to complete the homework package. I am sorry today's class is a little bit shorter, but if you want to submit your work for critique, you want me to take a look at your work, I take a look at work for free. All you have to do is go to my subreddit, go to istebrak.com, click on the subreddit right here, and this is where I collect work to critique. So hopefully this Thursday I can take a look at some of these and talk about how to block, talk about blocking and consistency, anatomy, eye consistency, drawing eyes that look like they're in the same direction, contrast for this one, and pushing the contrast a little bit further. A lot of 14-day challengers on the subreddit. Here, another example of just side view profile, kind of not knowing how to rotate the eye in profile view. So lots and lots of different varieties of skills and styles in my subreddit. So please head over there and critique each other. Doesn't matter your skill range, critique each other. You'll be surprised at what you learn from people with less skill than you, more skill than you. It's a great community for improvement. Thank you everyone for coming today. No leak splash critique today, unfortunately. I didn't have time to prepare one or look through all the requests. But I will see you guys on Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you everyone for coming. Bye guys.